So now we will stand facing the altar and take refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So please smooth out your mats and cushions and then stand facing the altar. So we will take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and then we will make 3 vows. So please repeat after me. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
Thank you so much. So please come sit around for the story time. Who doesn't like story time? You can come sit in the middle if you would like. Can you hear me back there? Okay, good. All right. Okay. I wonder if you've heard this story before. It's a little bit new, but it's based on a little anecdote that I found from a Buddhist teacher. So I've turned it into a longer story. We'll see how it goes. At the edge of a wide meadow, where tall grasses bent like green waves and dragonflies stitched the air, there stood a small thatch-roofed schoolhouse. It was not a very large schoolhouse, nor very grand. Its roof sagged in places, and its wide plank floorboards sang when you crossed them. Through the fine gaps between the windows and the window frames, you could smell the scent of pine needles when the sun was shining. This was where Willow Song Sunim taught the village children. No one knew exactly how old Willow Song Sunim was. Her hair was the color of frost, but her eyes were dark and lively. When she walked, she moved slowly as though listening to something beneath the earth. One morning, when the air was still cool, kind of like today, the children gathered on their cushions for the morning lesson. Sunim had a slight smile at the corners of her mouth as she turned from gazing out the window to address the class. The children felt a shiver of adventure awaited them this morning, and it was hard to suppress a giggle. Students, today you have a special assignment. Her tone was solemn, but again, the children sensed a bubbling current of mystery beneath it that made them listen with great attention. Today, you will go out into the forest and bring back something that is solid. The children exchanged glances. Something solid, like a rock? This will be easy. Surely they could finish the assignment by lunchtime and then go outside and play for the rest of the day. Choose your items carefully, the teacher said as the children dissolved into a dance of putting on of jackets and shoes and socks. And bring them back quickly, she shouted after them as they spilled out into the forest, laughing excitedly. The children scattered into the forest like tossed seeds. First was June, his hair long and shining, trailing out behind him as he trotted toward the river. If something was solid, he thought, it would be large and heavy and unmoving. He liked things that stayed where they were put. Next was Mira, who had the idea to wander back into the village to visit the blacksmith. She had been fascinated each day passing the blacksmith's store where the sound of metal on iron rang out like an exciting music she did not fully understand. Meanwhile, dreamy Thomas walked slowly toward the grove of the oldest pine trees, pausing to kick at pebbles or crouching down to examine a stick bug or interesting beetle. He had an idea of what to bring back. He would know it when he found it. What do you think they're going to bring back? Yes. A rock. What was the second one?
Some metal.
Oh, some metal. Mm-hmm. A shiny rock. What do you think?
A pine needle.
A pine needle. Ooh, these are all very good guesses. Let's see what happens. It was not long before June could hear the river, even before he could see it. It moved with a steady murmur, circling around stones and slipping past the reeds. He carefully removed his socks and shoes and stepped into the running water, pushing his hands into the current, which was cold enough to make his breath catch in his chest. There it was, a large gray rock, buried in sand. It did not budge when he pushed it with his foot. "This is solid," he whispered. With no small effort, he wrapped his fingers around the edges of the smooth stone and tugged. The stone shifted slightly, then rolled free with a heavy splash. June stumbled backward, wet to the knees, but triumphant. With a happy exhale, he dropped the heavy stone on the riverbank and crouched down to admire it more closely. Interestingly, he noticed that the side that had rested against the riverbed was smooth as glass, but the side that had poked up above the current was rough and pitted. Squatting down again, he hefted the rock up to his chest and cradled it there. He headed back toward the schoolhouse, straining under its weight, yet proud. Just at the edge of the path toward the village, Mira saw the familiar shape of the blacksmith shop with its door rolled open to the fresh air. Clang, clang. Sparks leapt from within like fireflies. She stood in the doorway shyly for a moment, watching the blacksmith place a rod of glowing red-hot iron onto an anvil and then lift a small, heavy hammer to shoulder height before dropping it with another clang. Deftly, as if performing a dance, the smith lifted the shaped iron tool and plunged it into a bucket of cold water beside the anvil. Steam rose in a hiss, and Mira's eyes widened. Iron! Strong enough to hold up roofs, to bend into wheels for heavy carts. A glint caught her eye on the floor just to her left, a long iron nail cast aside. She bent down to pick it up. "Could I take this?" she asked the smith. He shrugged kindly. "I suppose so. I didn't realize that was there. I have a lot of other ones." Cupped in her closed palm, the nail felt smooth and heavy and solid. Mira smiled and turned back towards the schoolhouse. In the densest part of the forest, Thomas entered the grove of the old pine trees. The ground was soft with fallen needles and the air was fresh. He smiled, recognizing one of the old trees as a friend, its bark thick and sweet-smelling, with golden beads of sap that rose to the surface. This tree was certainly even older than Willow Songsunum. He circled it slowly. The bark was scarred in places. A branch had broken off years before, leaving a rough knot. Yet here it stood, branches drinking in the cool morning sun on this early spring day. Nearby, he found what he was looking for, a small pine sapling growing in the knot of roots beneath one of the oldest trees in the grove. Digging with his bare hands, he found the sapling's roots and carefully brought them up in a fistful of soil. A tree lives longer than people, he thought. It must be solid. As he turned to go, a pine cone dropped from high above and landed at his feet. Bunk! But he barely noticed. It was nearly lunchtime when the children returned, arms full, faces flushed with effort and adventure. "Please place your items on the center table," Sunam said. June thudded the heavy stone onto the low table. Thunk. Mira carefully laid the iron nail beside it Thomas carefully placed the small pine tree beside the nail. Others brought a thick board from a fence, a piece of glass, a brick, a heavy book, and the table filled. Sunam smiled as she regarded the items. So, she said, you have found what appears to be solid. Now let's take a closer look. June, please tell me about your item. He stepped forward. The river cannot move this stone. The teacher nodded. Then she lifted a small glass of water from her desk and poured a few drops over the stone. Almost imperceptibly, a few grains of sand slipped down its side. This stone was once part of a mountain, she said. Wind loosened it, rain carried it, and the river shaped it. She tapped it lightly. Listen closely, even now it is becoming sand. June leaned his ear close to the rock, but he couldn't hear anything. Okay, who's next? Mira? Mira grinned and held up the nail. It's iron, she said. From the smith, iron does not bend easily. Sunam nodded and produced another small dish of water, and then plop, in went the iron nail. We'll wait a little while to see what happens, she said. By tomorrow, it will have the faintest layer of rust already. Mira frowned a little. She hadn't considered that. Thomas felt certain that his item would be the best one. The others weren't even alive. Thomas, what have you found? Sunam asked. A pine tree from the oldest pine grove in the forest. It will live longer than we will. With great attention, Sunam leant down and plucked one brown needle from its branch, and it fell silently to the floor. It is very true. This tree is always growing, she said, always letting go. The children were beginning to sense that this lesson was not the one they had anticipated. How had they misunderstood these objects as permanent? In his pleasant, straightforward bluntness, June raised his hand and before being called upon said loudly, Willow Song Sunam, is nothing solid then? The children grew quiet. Sunam did not answer right away. Instead, she crossed to the shelf by the window, and from it she lifted a tea bowl. It was simple and beautiful. The glaze was pale blue with a thin, dark rim. The children had seen it every day. She used it each morning for tea. She held it with both hands. This, she said, is my favorite bowl. The children leaned closer. Oh, so this must be solid, Mira said. With a light smile on her lips, Willow Song Sunam opened her hands, and the tea bowl crashed to the floor, striking the wood below with a clear, ringing sound and shattering. The children gasped. Sunam bent down and picked up a curved fragment of the tea bowl. Light caught its edge. Actually, she said, this bowl was already broken. The children did not understand. The day it was shaped from clay, she continued, it began to dry. The day it was fired, it began to cool. The day I first held it, it was moving toward this moment. June bent down to run his finger along the sharp edge of one of the fragments that had come to rest near his left foot like a petal. He thought he could hear now what Sunam had described, a soft energy pulsing beneath everything, special and tender and always changing. Oh, he said quietly to himself, and a tender and warm feeling spread inside his chest. He placed his hand to his chest and took a deep breath. Sunam went on, I treat this bowl with care, not because it will last forever, but because it will not. And then she regarded each of the children's faces, shining a smile to each person in turn. Even now, you are already changing. Taller today than yesterday, wiser sometimes. Soon, in a few years, your schooling will be complete. Do you understand the lesson? The children nodded. Well done then, Sunam said, and walked over to the corner of the room to pick up a broom and a dustpan. Now, she said, let us sweep up very carefully. And together they gathered the broken pieces of the tea bowl as tenderly as though they were holding the morning light itself. What do you think about that? Any comments? Questions? I think you guys had it figured out before the kids in the story did, actually. Okay. Well, that's all the story that I have for today. I think who's organizing the next activities for the younger folks?
Anyone who's joining in the families program, we will walk out chanting Ma'u, and we can gather in front of the residence hall.
Okay, and so the adults will stay here. You can move up into the front rows and we'll do a longer period of meditation once the children depart. So as always, we will chant Ma'um as the children depart. Yes?
And also, Wasamsam is offering mindful parenting, which
yes.
will be held where in Wasamsam?
In the historic temple, next door in the yellow building in the library.
Okay.
Gathering outside. Yeah, we can gather outside first.
Okay. Well, thank you. Have fun. Ma'um, ma'um, ma'um. 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 So just maybe take a little bit of a stretch if you need one, and then we'll sit for a longer period of meditation. just close out our meditation practice with some mindful stretching, rubbing our hands together. So you might have guessed, given the Dharma story for the children, that the theme for today's service is impermanence. And as the kids were coming in this morning, Saram had prepared, who was our choir director a few years ago when we had a more regular choir, had prepared a song by a Dharma teacher who was a songwriter and who also was active here in the 90s. His Dharma name is Paramita. And the chorus goes, so the song is the story of the Buddha leaving the palace for the first time, kind of in his late 20s, and seeing these sights that he's never seen before. An old person, a sick person, a dying person, and a holy person, a monk. And the chorus goes, impermanence surrounds us, existence doesn't stay. The old ones of tomorrow are young enough today. So he sat in meditation, he didn't dream or doze, and he found liberation, which neither comes nor goes. So Really, that's all you need to know about impermanence. It's in that song. But I'll try to say a few more words about it, and then I'm hoping we can have a little bit more of an informal discussion about your experiences with this very human phenomenon of getting confused about what's permanent, the pain of impermanence, the way that we relate to that. So the story that you heard for the kids was based on this little kernel of an anecdote that I found that's attributed to a few different Buddhist teachers, but it's the story of the Buddhist teacher who has a favorite teacup and asks his students, is this teacup broken? And of course they all say, well, no, so we can see you holding it. And he breaks the teacup and says, well, the teacup is essentially always already broken, to kind of try to convey this idea that if we can become aware of the impermanence of some of the things that we're quite attached to, that it changes our relationship to those, to the objects, the precious objects, but in bigger ways, perhaps to the people in our lives. And so I had an experience, it's always a bit uncanny, actually. Every time I think I'm going to give a Dharma talk about a particular theme, that theme starts happening to me in my life, maybe more than I would like. I think there's something, scientific about that. So about a week ago, we had hired a handyman to come over to our little condo and help us hang some heavy things on the wall that we didn't have quite the right equipment for. And he started, he was going to do the hardest one first, which is this big glass framed art print that my husband had acquired several years ago that's just been sitting in our basement while waiting to be hung up. And it was going to be hung over our headboard in the bedroom, this very pretty landscape. And I was downstairs working at the computer, and he's carefully measuring and puts in the hardware to hang it and the leveler and everything. And then all I hear was this huge crash, glass shattering, and the painting fell down off the wall and glass all over the bedroom. And the handyman was very contrite. He's like, well, I'm really sorry, but the frame just split when I went to hang it. So there was some glue kind of missing in the corners, or I just didn't have enough glue in the frame maybe. And so he very nicely cleaned and vacuumed up all the glass. We kept finding glass around the house for several days. And I had so many conflicting emotions all at once. I had to go sit outside and just kind of like take a minute. And my neighbor was walking by and she saw the handyman's truck because it's like, branded. And she's like, is he any good? I said, well, I'm not sure yet. She's like, oh, okay. And so I just sat there and I thought, okay, let me see what is present. I'm just sitting on my little front stoop, and it was actually a little bit warm that day, so that was kind of nice. And it's like, I was really mad. I was like, because I didn't know at first what had happened. I was like, I can't believe we spent money on someone who dropped our painting. That was the first thought. Blame. And then I felt kind of some shame, like, oh, I should have anticipated that this could happen, then I wouldn't be upset about it. Disappointment, sadness. I really liked that painting. I was excited to see it hung up in the room. Loss, frustration. We got to take this back to the frame shop and explain what happened. Are they going to charge us a lot of money? All in just a split second of something falling on the ground. And then, woof, all of those thoughts, perceptions, judgments are just immediately there. And of course, it was just for one piece of glass, really, that fell. And we've all had that experience. Almost sometimes it's almost maybe sometimes easier to notice all of our reactions when it's just like a little thing that we like that breaks. But sometimes when it's the bigger things, all those emotions are just even more heightened, but we maybe struggle with them just allowing them to come forward even more. So I was kind of reflecting on this after that painting broke, and I think actually I was rereading some of the sutras in which the Buddha and some of his early teachings is trying to convey this concept of impermanence to the other people who want to learn. And it's pretty clear from those early teachings that this was like a really key insight that he's trying to give to other people. That essentially, when we're confusing what is impermanent for what is permanent, is one of the biggest sources of our human suffering. And then, of course, the way that we respond to that recognition of impermanence just piles on more suffering. And so he's not saying don't care about things, because our human ability to care about things is really integral to what it means to be a person. But he's saying that, just like the lyrics of the song, that if there's some undercurrent of stability from this wider awareness that impermanence is always happening, whether we're noticing it or not, then there is some place beyond getting caught up in the attachment to the notion of permanence that has some freedom to it. So that's what he's talking a lot about in some of his early sermons. So I started thinking about, recognizing impermanence can look like not getting attached to thinking that you know what's solid or what an outcome will be. Maybe that's one way of thinking about it. And I think also that recognizing impermanence can look like mystery and even renewal. So I've been thinking about that a lot because I'm going to be 45 in a few months, and I noticed in the last year or so that I forget words. I looked up the phenomenon for this, which does have a diagnosis. It is called nominal aphasia. I was like, oh, it's real. Okay, yes. It's the feeling when you have a word on the tip of your tongue. It's usually a noun, actually. I assume that's why they call it nominal. Isn't that related to nominative? You're my grammar expert. Thank you. It's a noun. I can't think of a noun for something. And I'm a writer. So this is a very unusual experience where you're in conversation and then all of a sudden there's a word trapped on the tip of your tongue and your mind just goes blank. This has never happened to me before. And now it's happening on a pretty regular basis. Well, apparently, as a woman, when your hormones begin fluctuating in midlife, it affects your language center. And if you're a very language-oriented person, I think, according to my doctor, you're going to notice it more often. I was like, oh, good. But there's this moment of a complete blankness in my mind when that happens that I think is sort of emblematic of the way that I relate to any other kind of moment of groundlessness. There's that invitation to just kind of be in the moment of groundlessness. Like, what is the word? Or there's all of the suffering that brings up. I can't believe I can't think of this word. People at work are going to think I'm losing it. You just feel kind of dumb. And so that's been very interesting. Yet it's sort of this invitation where if you're sitting in that moment where you can't think of the word, you really get to know your mind again. It's just like when we're sitting in meditation and our mind wanders off and then we come back. It's like, oh, right. Just in this moment, something is still present. What is it? Let me pay attention. So that's been interesting. That's maybe the sort of mystery part of impermanence that I'm talking about. Sometimes the word comes back a little bit later, or sometimes I have to describe the noun in other terms, like, the thing that does this, and then my husband would be like, you mean like tweezers? I'm like, yeah, yes. But I think the renewal side has been more of a surprise. So my father-in-law died unexpectedly last summer. And so I've been present with my husband throughout this grieving process. And all of the many layers of it, the immediate, really deep grief, just the physical crying every day grief, the sort of numbness grief, the grief of having your first birthday when your parent isn't there and you can't call them on the phone. And also just the mystery of watching him come to understand his life with his dad in all of these different ways that weren't obvious when his dad was still alive. And he said to me the other day, you know, I didn't realize when you lose someone like a parent who you're so close to, that it's not just the grief of their death and them being gone, but you're also coming to grips with your relationship with them for your whole life. And it's really been a mysterious but also beautiful process, because I see the ways in which he's having some new insights about this relationship and about himself and about how he felt as a child, how he feels now as an adult. And I see in him a process of renewal, letting go of some things that weren't serving him, old stories, old judgments, old disappointments, and just kind of embracing the things that he has been really learning to treasure about his memories of his dad. So that's been very unexpected. And I think we have this idea that impermanence is, I don't know, maybe it's just my idea, some kind of almost like a punishment. All these things will be taken away from you, so learn to deal with it. Which I think is maybe kind of more of a mistaken stoicism. But actually, I've been experimenting with the idea of changing my relationship to impermanence as being about some kind of mystery, some kind of possibility for renewing my understanding of what life is asking of us. And I think life is asking of us to find ways all the time of staying in it, whatever that staying in it means. Yeah, Barbara, did you have something? Yeah.
I have a tendency to hear a lot of stuff on my cell phone computer and discoveries about pomegranate juice, lifting up the acetylcholine to build memory connections, or another neurosurgeon was claiming 4 constituents like phosphatidylcholine, I can't even pronounce it.
Okay.
And, I mean, there's an image of there being discoveries to jump above those things that happen.
Oh.
And I kind of missed it. So did you say that there was something in the framework that caused the accident with the painting?
Yeah, it seemed like the frame job didn't have enough glue in the wood, so it just the split at the corners where the wood was glued together. Yeah.
So it wasn't the fault of the person.
No, it doesn't seem like it. No, yeah.
It almost would have been better to enjoy it sitting in the basement.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thanks, Barbara. So I wanted to just read 3 different kind of maybe lessons about this. I think they're kind of teachings of impermanence. They're not necessarily presented that way, but I think that is kind of what they're pointing us to. They each take a slightly different approach. And so I want to use that maybe just as a starting point for discussion about if there's anything in these 3 lists that I'm going to read you that feels like a particularly useful teaching for you about your relationship to impermanence now, or if you have any other comments or questions, we can talk about that. So let's see if there's anything else I was going to say before that. No, I think that's okay for now. So the first one, let me find my notes. It's called the 5 Remembrances, which I've talked about before. I believe these were written originally by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen teacher. So the 5 remembrances are: I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground on which I stand. Okay, so that's the first list, 5 remembrances. The next one is a teaching that is sometimes called the 8 worldly winds, and it is 4 pairs of sort of inescapable human conditions. Okay, so the 8 worldly winds, the 4 pairs of them are gain and loss, status and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. I'll read them one more time. The 8 worldly winds, gain and loss, status and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. And then the last one, a little bit longer, this is from our liturgy book, is a recitation called the 10 Guides Along the Path. And I think this one is interesting in that it speaks a little bit to that impermanence as mystery or renewal. Although it's I would say, fairly straight talking. So see what you think. 10 Guides Along the Path. Don't hope for perfect health. Perfect health leads only to greater good. Treat illness as medicine, not disease. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't long for a life free from hardship. Such a life leads only to haughtiness and self-pampering. Make worries and hardships a way of life. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't hope for a lack of impediments in your study. Release is hiding right behind obstructions. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't hope for a lack of temptations in your training. A lack of temptations will only serve to soften your resolve. Treat temptations as friends who are helping you along the path. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't hope for easy success. Easy accomplishment leads only to increased rashness. Accomplish through difficulties. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't hope to get your own way with friends. Having friends give in to your wishes leads only to arrogance. Make long-term friends through compromise in your relationships. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't expect people to follow your wishes or commands. This too leads to arrogance. Consider those who differ from you to be your character builders. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't expect rewards for your kindnesses. This leads only to a scheming mind. Throw out expectation of rewards like you'd throw out old shoes. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't expect more out of life than you deserve. Exaggerated profit-seeking leads only to foolishness. Become rich at heart with small amounts. So spoke the enlightened one. Don't complain about vexations. This leads only to resentment and poison in the heart. Consider vexations as the first door on the path. So spoke the enlightened one. So as I was reading each of those three lists and making a few notes here for myself, I actually wrote down sort of a strange little brain blip that I kind of liked, so I'm going to keep it. I wrote that these inescapable human conditions like aging, loss, and disappointment are not selfing practice opportunities, not selfing. So we talk about non-self as a Buddhist concept, sort of not having a separate, fixed, permanent self that you can point to as like, that's me. And all of these sort of conditions that we face and the emotions that we might have about them are reminding us, I think it's a not selfing practice. Oh, right, that's not permanent. What I thought was permanent isn't. And just one last very short anecdote, and then I'll open it up for comments about those lists of see if anything resonated for you. But we're just starting this year's precept taking study group, which is the practice that people undergo for a few week period of studying the Buddhist precepts, the moral teachings of Buddhism, before formally committing to the Buddhist path. And we'll have a ceremony in May for them. And at that ceremony, you receive a Buddhist name. So my Buddhist name is Jagwa, Jagwa, Jagwa. And the literal translation of it that I was given was, my fault, my misdeed, question mark, exclamation point. So you didn't know that, did you? My fault, my misdeed, question mark, exclamation point. Yes. When we had some Korean scholars visiting a couple of years ago, and they were told what my name was, they started laughing. They're like, that's a very interesting name. Apparently it does have this connotation of an sort of an exclamation that you might say in Korean that's sort of like, oh, my fault? You know, that kind of thing, my fault. We tell people that when you receive a Buddhist name that it has these three kind of layers, the sort of literal surface meaning, sort of like the hidden meaning, and then the secret meaning. And sometimes someone will ask, well, how do you know if you've learned all of the meanings? And I said, well, I think that you'll know when you've begun to get underneath the literal meaning, but I don't know if I can answer the question that I have figured out all three layers yet. But over the last few years, it has transformed its meaning for me from the sense of this, sort of my initial insight into it was that the same ego that's concerned about always being right is the same one that's concerned about always being wrong, like two sides of the same coin. That was my initial understanding of it. And right now, my understanding of it is this question of what's mine? What's mine? What's mine to care for? What's mine in this world to offer? What's not mine? So that's kind of how I'm understanding the shifting meaning of this name that I think points again to the mystery of self and not self. So those are just a few thoughts, but I will stop talking now because we have a good 10 minutes or so. If people want to comment on those teachings that I read, so the 5 remembrances, the 8 worldly winds, and the 10 guides along the path, I'm happy to reread any of them if you'd like to hear them again. Yeah, August.
Just like a punishment having not. is just the one they lose and when they fall out of my hands. It really is one of the greatest curses of mortal existence and greatest boons as well. It's like the truth of time only moves forward is the most relieving and most terrifying truth there is.
Indeed. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Oh, and here we'll bring the microphone so that everyone can hear you.
Good morning. All this talk of broken tea bowls and frames made me think of kintsugi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but the Japanese art of, they deliberately break dishes and then glue them back together with gold in the seams, basically. And it's a beautiful work of art, more beautiful than the original before because of its imperfections. And it made me think of also the cracks are how the light gets in, when we break. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think your neighbor had a comment.
I don't know which story brought what to mind, but there's a couple things. The impermanence of the body, and I wish the children were here to hear it. We're 7 different bodies by the time we're 50.
7 different ones.
Yeah.
That's how many times your cells turn over, right? I think I've read that too.
And the other thing was, I forgot.
It might come back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Someone here in the back.
So you mentioned that when you give sermons, they usually pop up in your life. And this morning I dropped a bowl and it shattered. I was like, oh, I wonder what that was about. And then there it is.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good. That was funny. That was a funny moment.
Thank you.
Jagwa, you reminded me of something that my mother did. My mother, who died 20 years ago, my mother was a hoarder. And after she died, we excavated and cleaned out the house. And I found so many beautiful things that she had hidden away in the basement and the attic, because they were so beautiful and she didn't want them to break or be worn or harmed. And that made me so sad, because she ate off of old plastic dishes and was not surrounded by beauty. She had beauty in her house, but it was hidden away because she was afraid of impermanence. So some of those things I took back to my house, and I have worn and broken them. And they give me much joy. And I love inviting friends over and serving them on those plates. It's like a gift to my mother.
Thank you. Oh, did you remember what it was?
Yes, one of them. So I think equanimity is the answer. If there needed to be an answer to Nietzsche, change, constant change, it's equanimity. And it's in our relationships, in those relationships, always shifting. Well, it's ideal if those relationships are always shifting. Like One of the first things I do when on those rare occasions when I have a regular job, I'm looking for my replacement. First thing, look for my replacement, and I avoid doing the I thing as much as possible. It's a we. If there's something to be done, and it's worth doing, it's worth doing cooperatively or collaboratively, not monetarily.
Solo. Yeah, thank you.
So I feel like every morning I wake up, my personality is a bit different each day. That's a bit scary because it makes me variable around people. One day I might be more aggressive, the other I'm like sad, the other, you know. And I'm diagnosed bipolar. I take medication. So impermanence is definitely a big thing in my life. And if there's a bright spot to any of it, like you said, it's kind of like the discovery in it, that there is an evolution. And it's like piecing together a puzzle that's always evolving and shaping. And I think that's beautiful. So, thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a comment? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you. So I've like always collected stickers. Like I've always loved stickers since I was younger, but I was like always afraid to use them for a long period of my life. And so I would just have all these beautiful stickers, but I would never actually take them off of the sticker sheet and use them. And like something that I don't know when I started it, but at some point in my life, even when I was younger, I realized like I couldn't really fully appreciate the stickers if I never used them. And so now I put them on cards and I buy new stickers, but I put, I always have this collection of beautiful, unique stickers, but I also share them with other people. And I try to be open to like giving them away. If someone, comments that they like the stickers, I'm like, you should take some home with you. So yeah, I guess using impermanence in that way, like even a small thing, but it's also helped me appreciate my things more to be able to be open to like giving them away.
Thank you.
Sometime along the way, I came up with the phrase for myself, this too shall pass. And one of example was, I was really in love with this guy. In his embrace, it was so wonderful. And then I said to myself, this too, in the embrace, this too will pass. And sure enough, the next week he was throwing tomatoes at me. True story. Not just a metaphor, but we were out in the garden and there was a lot of tomatoes around. This too will pass. Yeah.
One of the things that the story had me thinking about, like a while ago, I had like a serious bout of depression, and I was talking to one of my other friends here at the temple, and they spent a lot of time listening. And after I laid it all out, he said, "Well, that's the good thing about impermanence." So like we did talk a lot about like, oh, there are a lot of these good things that are fleeting, but like the challenging things are fleeting too.
Yeah, I found it interesting. We talked about the impermanence of objects and the impermanence of people, but something that's been on my mind, because I'd been kind of on an upward trend last week and the week before that, and I came to this false conclusion that clarity would also be permanent, you know? And I was just so on top of the world, you know. I was like expressing myself. And you mentioned you're a writer. So in the morning I was feeling inspired to write, and it was like an everyday thing. And I became attached to that, you know. And the more I became attached, the slower it was slowly being taken away from me. And so I just wanted to hear your thoughts about clarity in writing.
Well, I think you've described it beautifully, and that, I mean, if we look at what the Buddha was talking about when he was trying to convey this idea of impermanence, and I should have brought my scripture book, but there's this concept in Buddhism of the 5 skandhas. Skandha is a word that essentially means like a pile, like a heap, and it implies a heap of sticks. And the Buddha's teaching is that humans are made up of these 5 piles, and it's things like our consciousness, our perceptions, our thoughts, etc. So I haven't memorized all 5 at the tip of my tongue, but he's talking about that those are essentially nothing we could point to is ourself, and it's not fixed. And so I think what you've described is a perfect example of that recognition that those things are always changing, and it's the attachment to them not being changed, or that we can somehow rely on things being unchanging, that we often get caught up in. But his teaching around this is that the practice of meditation and ethical conduct does bring this stability that is what he means by kind of liberation, I think. So free from getting as attached, or at least free to see a little bit more clearly that those things are likely to always be changing. So yeah, I like the idea of the sticks. You know, it makes me think of like, even when you see like a pile of firewood, there's a lot of spaces in between there. Like it's not solid. So yeah, that's what it made me think of when you said that. Yeah, one over here.
I'm reminded of a story I was told some time ago of this great Zen teacher who I think was invited to some sort of college or something to give some great Zen talk about the greatness of Zen. And he had spent all this time preparing his speech and everything. He goes up, you know, in front of this hall full of Zen students anxiously awaiting all of his Zen wisdom. And he opens his mouth to give his speech and finds that he's forgotten his entire speech. And he stands at the microphone just dumbfounded. And he cannot remember a word of the speech. And he stands up there and he says, he just starts just appreciating and the emotions that come with that. You know, he just says like embarrassment, and he gives a bow. You know, being like dumbfounded, gives a bow. You know, ashamed, gives a bow. And he just spends time just at the mic going through the experience of having totally blanked on this very important occasion. And he walks away from the microphone. And he's just walks away feeling like a total failure. But then afterward, you know, people come up shaking his hand. He's getting emails. He's getting donations, everything. People are like, that was the greatest speech I've ever heard. I mean, he perfectly experienced, you know, it wasn't, they were like, oh, we were expecting like a bunch of words, but we got like a presentation. We got, and somebody just walked up to the mic and like performed what you do when you're struck with impermanence. And they were all, you know, ready to hear that message. And that's what they all took in. And they were like, this is the best speech we've ever heard. The whole seminar, this is the best speech. It's the keynote. Yeah, I'm just reminded of how that could be. Because again, I relate to that story, how it's sort of like when, you know, St. Francis of Assisi, one of my favorite quotes of his was that, you know, to be preaching the gospel, to preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. You know, there's a sense of like that impermanence surrounds us, impermanence is within us. It's like what do you do about it? It's like you're doing it now. You can't not be doing it. You know, that's part of what it means for impermanence to surround us and for impermanence to be in us. You can't you can't mess it up. You can't do it wrong. What you're doing right now is how you deal with impermanence. The bewilderment, the frustration, the blanking, the shame, the pain, you know, but also the seeing of the opportunities. Again, like a few people pointed to, and also sort of like the stickers and the hoarding. When I was little, I went through a period of kleptomania, where I would just steal things from people. I just, and looking back on it now, I can see that it wasn't about stealing things from people as much as it was kind of very similar to hoarding. It was about having nice things, just having them, knowing that I had them. And I was very good at it. That was one of the sad things about the story. I was too good at stealing things from people. But one day it dawned on me that I could never enjoy any of my stolen things because I was like 8 or something. Like maybe I was 12. And the first question the first thing they would say is, "Well, that's a really nice necklace or whatever you've got there." And the second thing they would say is, "Pray tell, how did you come by it, you 12-year-old boy?" You know? And so it would instantly be like, well, no one could ever know that I have any of these things. And it suddenly became like, why do you have, why do you do this? You have all these things, but you can't enjoy them. And then, of course, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. But like, that's sort of how the story, that's sort of the third act of the story where I actually take it upon myself to, just as expertly as I laid hands on them, to very expertly return them to the people and places I had lifted them from without their noticing. But anyway, that's kind of not part of the story. But the idea being that that it's sort of like this is sort of the gift of impermanence. In a way, is that they do change. Because if they didn't change, then they couldn't be what they were. We couldn't enjoy them. If they stayed the way they were, then we would stay the way we were. And there was, how could the moment after of enjoyment come if the moment of acquisition had never come? And how could we gain anything if we had never lost anything? How could we love anything if we'd never hated anything? It's that impermanence is here is what makes being here worth being. And so I think that's sort of the hidden gem in impermanence is, being able to do anything, for it to mean anything, that anything happens. Well, it has to change. It's just, yeah.
Thank you. I think I saw one last hand over here. Yeah. Over here, Simone. Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I liked, I don't know, we keep talking about impermanence, but we're also relating it to non-self a lot. So, which is almost the same thing, right? Like, I mean, they're part of the 3 marks of existence, right, in Buddhism. And so, and I like this because, impermanence gives me the freedom to not worry about the permanence of things, right? So, yeah, like there are certain things that, like, if you have this thing as a permanent thing, a permanent part of your life, a permanent state, you're just too worried about losing it because deep down it's impermanent, but you want it to be permanent, but it's not. But then there are things that are impermanent, and they're impermanent, and you just treat it that way, and it gives it so much more value than anything else in your life. Okay, like I just had experiences of like being somewhere, being in like in this village with some really nice people, the nicest people ever, and the most beautiful landscape and everything. But I was only going to be there for 3 days, and I knew that was, that was going to go away. But it just, the whole time there was meditation, because like this is going to go away, and it was there this bitterness to it, but there was so much sweetness to every sensation, every moment that was spent there, because this is very, very unique, in your story. Like it's very, very unique. And like when you look in your memory, and then when it's gone, it's permanent, it disappears. That experience will have a sweet tanginess to it that remains, and maybe it will go away too, but still, yeah. So, yeah, I think it's there's so much. It's so much better that things are impermanent, like not for any logical reason, but like the a lot of what you mentioned, obviously, but like it's just that it's really incredible that things are impermanent. Just it'll just all go away. Things go away. Things come in, and it's just there's always something new. It's always exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're probably a little over time, so that's probably good enough today. Thank you so much for everyone who shared. I really appreciate your comments. Yeah, thank you. So, do we have some announcements? Okay, let's hear them.
So welcome everybody. We're really glad you're here. And we invite children to come.
Microphone.
Would you like a microphone?
Thank you. All right, I'll start over. Welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. We're all glad you're here. We have the family service we had today. Well, there'll be another one on April the 12th from 9:45 till noon. And next Sunday, there's a special event, March 15th, at our 10 a.m. service. We will be joined by Dr. Liu, a specialist in Chinese medicine. We are indeed fortunate to have his clinic in our community and appreciate his skill as a healer, as well as his generosity in sharing wisdom about good health. Family members and friends are welcome to come to this service as well. So there's several things here. After Sunday service, we have a question and answer sessions, Ask a Dharma Teacher. It's on April 5th at noon after Sunday service in the Buddha Hall. The Uposatha observance, Unburden Yourself from Guilt and Renew Your Buddhist Precepts, is March 15th and April 19th, 2 to 3 in the Buddha Hall. Sangha tea for members and non-members who would like to be more involved in the temple is March 22nd, April 26th. And is there one today too? No, not today. Okay. Recovery Dharma meets in the Historic Library, Sundays noon to 1 p.m. And there are some special events. Parinirvana Day is Sunday, March 29th, 10 to noon. Ancestor Appreciation Day, Sunday, April 19th, 10 to noon. There's an Earth Day celebration on Sunday, April 26th, 10 to noon. And Together Action, which we have every Saturday from 3 to 5, is a great community building. And it's a good way to get to know your Sangha too. Okay, so there's Introduction to Meditation classes, Beginner Zen courses. There's Introduction to Zen Meditation course 5 Thursday evenings, 6:30 to 8, starting April 23rd. There's Introduction to Zen Meditation Retreat, which is an overnight, 7 p.m. Friday through noon Saturday, March 27th through 28th, and on April 17th through the 18th. And they give you breakfast with that too, which is good. A good breakfast. Zen retreats are the Spring Art and Meditation Retreat, Wednesday, April 8th at 7 p.m. through April 12th at 9 a.m. Study groups in the house. Study groups are in Sangha House, Meditation Hall. There's a member sitting and study group, Wednesday, 6:30 to 8 p.m. Via Zoom or in person. The Way of the Bodhisattva study group, Thursdays from 9:15 to 10 a.m., which is Zoom or in person. We also have Qigong on Mondays at 6:30 to 8, and yoga on Tuesdays, 6:30 to 8. And let's see. Oh, good. Only one more thing. Our temple is, our temple is entirely supported by your donations, and there's a fishbowl in the lobby for monetary donations, and there's a PayPal QR code as well as an electronic credit card device. So there's lots of ways you could give to the meeting, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sheila.
Recovery Dharma meets in the historic temple at John has already gone on to get it set up. I was repeating because Iljan asked.
Okay. Any other announcements?
Yeah, we'll have further action. Trevor's going to be quite a bit. In the back driveway after the service, and then there's also opportunity for working with plants in the Sangha Hall if anyone is interested.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of plants and they constant. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Okay, so let's formally end with the 4 great vows. Please repeat after me. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
And then if I could have assistance with putting away mats and cushions, the mats and cushions touching the red carpet at the center of the room can stay. Just please carefully smooth them out and make them look neat and tidy. And then the rows outside of the center of the room, on this side of the room will get neatly stacked on the red stage. And on this side of the room, the round cushions go on the red cubbies and the flat mats go in the back corner there. So we'll stand, straighten our mats and cushions, make 3 formal bows, and then if you could assist putting away mats and cushions before you leave the room, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Oh, right, sure, yes. So if you came in the back door, remember that your shoes are that away instead of that away.